right, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau making a childcare announcement in Mississauga. We'll listen in live.
This is a $625 million investment over 4 years that will help early learning and childcare providers renovate, retrofit, and build new not-for-profit and public childcare facilities. Childcare providers and educators are at the forefront of building a Canada-wide system, including delivering on our $10 a day commitment. So I want to thank them for all of their work as we continue to recognize and support their efforts here in Ontario and right across the country. We're focused on delivering results for Canadians, and that must include better access to childcare for families. You see, confident countries invest in themselves and in their future. That is our government's vision. We're facing a lot of challenges right now, but the answer is not to stop investing in Canadians. Pierre Poilievre keeps saying that everything is broken, and his only idea for the future is to cut supports and programs that people rely on. That's not responsible leadership, and that's not how we build the stronger future we need to have. It's a pessimistic and damaging perspective that doesn't do right by Canadians. He wants to tear things down, but we're focused on building things up, like $10 a day childcare. Une économie centrée sur le bien-être de tous les Canadiens.
An economy focused on the well-being of all Canadians is an economy where mothers do not have to choose between their families or their careers. And a family can afford quality childcare. That is how we will continue to build. Thank you. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Minister Gould. And thank you very much, Prime Minister. I'm pleased to be here in Mississauga, Ontario. Thank you for making this important announcement.
It's been almost 2 years since we announced our Canada-wide early learning and childcare initiative. And while we've seen such tremendous progress, particularly when it comes to fee reductions, we have families across this country that are saving between $3,000 and $6,000 a year on their childcare fees. And I have heard from parents from coast to coast to coast who talk about how transformative this has been for them and their families. And I've heard from mothers in particular who have said that this has given them the confidence to go back to work. And we've seen that in the numbers. Quite frankly, we have the highest female job work participation rate in Canadian history right now of women of childbearing age. And so partly thanks to the work that we have done on ELCC. But we also know that we need to grow the number of spaces that are available for families across this country. This is part of our commitment to create 250,000 new spaces from coast to coast to coast, 52,000 of which have already been announced. And we're on track to meet that objective in partnership and in collaboration with the provinces and territories. Today's announcement is about making it possible to reach those harder to reach places, to ensure that whether folks live in childcare deserts, remote or rural areas, whether they're in high cost urban environments with low income neighborhoods, whether it's official language, minority communities, urban, Indigenous, or racialized communities, these funds will be transferred to the provinces and territories based on the same calculation formula that we had put in place for the bilateral agreements to help make sure that every family in Canada who wants access to a childcare space has that access. So today is a really exciting announcement. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled for the leadership and the vision of the Prime Minister who has made this possible and made this a reality. And I'm thrilled at the impact that this is going to continue to have on Canadian families, on our children, and of course those who work in early childhood education. So merci beaucoup tout le monde et c'est une bonne journée aujourd'hui pour les familles, pour les enfants et pour les centres de petite enfance ici au Canada.
And for early childhood centers here in Canada.
Thank you. We will now be starting with the question and answer period. Nous allons maintenant commencer avec la période des questions. First question goes to CBC.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Simon Dingley from CBC. Welcome back to Southern Ontario, sir. How worried are you that one company may soon own the majority of English language newspapers in Canada? And is this something you might object to?
We're seeing the report. We understand how challenging situation is for journalism right now with the increase in revenue going to internet giants and challenges facing professional independent journalists right across the country. We've been very engaged as a country and as a government in supporting the kind of journalism that is broad and professional, representing a range of perspectives, but also providing that foundation to democratic discourse. I know that this is a proposal that is being carefully looked at and analyzed. I know the Competition Bureau and others are going to be taking looks at it because this is a significant step. I won't comment on it right now, but I will say we need to continue to make sure we are supporting the ability of Canadians to get local news, to get quality journalism, to keep them informed about how our country is doing and where we're going all together.
J'ai la même question en français sur le Toronto Star et Post Media, s'il vous plaît.
En tant que gouvernement, nous avons toujours démontré
As a government, we have always demonstrated that just how we understand important it is to have a strong and independent media, journalists who are doing the work of challenging those in positions of power, and providing information on the challenges and solutions ahead of us. This government will continue to be there to support journalists in their important work. There is a wide diversity of perspectives. We're looking at that position closely, and we will be following it. I know that there are different bodies that will be examining the details, and that is in fact good for Canada and its citizens. But we will be following that news as it
The Assembly of
develops.
First Nations meeting today to discuss Chief Roseanne Archibald, who's been accused of breaching harassment and whistleblower policies. Do you still have faith in her leadership in that job?
One of the colonial principles that it is so important for governments to do away with is the idea that we should have opinions or even public positioning on how Indigenous communities, First Nations people choose to govern themselves. Our responsibility is to be there as partners in the path forward, and I can assure you that this government will always be there to work with the Assembly of First Nations and their leadership, regardless of what various positions or who wins or who does what within that leadership.
La même question en français, s'il vous plaît.
Le principe de notre gouvernement est de travailler avec l'Assemblée des Premières Nations,
is to work with the First Nations Assembly and the First Nations Organization,
le leadership autochtone à travers
as well as Indigenous institutions and leadership across Canada. It's not up to us to take positions on who should be in positions of power. It's the community themselves that must decide that. Therefore, we will be there to work together with anyone who might be in the leadership of the Assembly of First Nations. Good morning. When it comes to discussions with opposition parties about a public inquiry commission on foreign interference, where are discussions? Conversations are continuing to happen. We know that it's important to demonstrate to Canadians that we are doing everything and have done everything to protect the 2019 and 2020 elections. And they will know that we will continue to do everything possible. That includes working with opposition parties on proposals, which should be acceptable to all parties. Unfortunately, we've seen the level of toxicity and partisanship that surrounded the latest process implemented, including personal attacks against Mr. Johnston. That is why we are now proposing an approach, and we would like to have the participation and approval of the other parties. This would be before launching any other process to ensure that once again this process does not fall to partisanship.
I think it's really important that Canadians can have confidence in the mechanisms and the institutions we have to fight foreign interference. Those mechanisms that came to the conclusion that our 2019 and 2021 election integrity held, that those, despite attempts by foreign interference that is ongoing in all of our institutions, including democratic and private businesses, what did not impact the outcome of the 2019 and 2021 elections. But we also saw, through the mechanisms we put forward over the past months, that opposition parties played terrible, partisan and toxic games with a process that was independent and serious in its approach. So as we put forward proposals to the other parties on how we can move forward to restore Canadians' confidence in our abilities to fight foreign interference, we will ensure, before we launch any next process, that there is full buy-in by the other parties on how it'll be done and who will do it, because we do not want to see someone of the integrity of David Johnston in future people we might choose to do this work attacked by the same partisan toxicity that unfortunately we saw on display over the past months.
Une deuxième question. Comment vont les négociations avec Meta et Google sur les redevances aux entreprises de presse? Quel genre de soutien est-ce que le gouvernement est prêt à offrir aux médias pour
and what
assurer
kind
leur
of support
survie?
is the government prepared to offer to media
On a
outlets?
besoin, dans une démocratie, d'avoir
As I said before,
des journalistes,
in a democracy, we need to
et du
have
journalisme rigoureux
journalists
et
and
indépendant
rigorous journalism that is
qui donne
independent.
confiance aux Canadiens et aux citoyens
This gives
que,
Canadians
tout est en
and
train
citizens the
d'être
confidence
examiné et
that
mis au
everything
défi,
is being examined and
à chaque jour.
challenged
On a
daily.
besoin de nouvelles locales pour
We
les Canadiens,
need
pour
new
raconter leurs
outlets
histoires, pour
for
leur informer sur
Canadians
ce qui se passe dans
to
le
tell
monde
their
autour d'eux.
stories and find
Et
out
depuis
about
des
what is
années,
going
on voit le
on in the
déclin
world
du
around
journalisme
them.
avec la montée des géants du web.
And we're seeing the decline of
Maintenant, on est dans
journalism
une
with the rise of
situation
web
où
giants.
Facebook
Now we find ourselves in a
refuse
situation where Facebook
de
is
payer
refusing
leur juste part
to pay
pour
their fair
s'assurer que
share
le journalisme et la
to
démocratie
ensure
continuent à
that
bien
journalism
fonctionner au
and
pays.
democracy continues to work
Et
in the
c'est
country.
extrêmement désolant de voir,
It's extremely
particulièrement parce
disappointing to
qu'il n'y a aucune
see,
règle actuellement
particularly
qui est
because there is
en
no
place
current rule in place
pour Meta ou pour les géants du web.
for
On
Meta
est
or
en
other
train de
web
parler
giants.
avec eux de quel
We are in
règlement
talks
on
with
pourrait
them
installer dans
about
les
what
années,
kind of
dans les mois à
regulations
venir,
could be
mais
implemented
ils ont
in the
réagi
months
de
and years to
façon
come.
assez irresponsable pour dire non, on veut
However,
même pas en
they
parler. On
reacted
bloque l'accès aux
irresponsibly,
nouvelles locales
saying
pour les
they did not
Canadiens.
even want to talk about
Je peux
it, to the
souligner
detriment of
qu'avec
Canadians.
Google, on continue
I
d'avoir
can say that with
de bonnes
Google,
conversations.
we are
On
continuing
veut
to have good
s'assurer que les
conversations.
Canadiens, évidemment,
We want to
puissent
ensure
avoir
that
accès à des
Canadians
nouvelles
can have
locales, puissent
access
avoir
to
accès à
local news
l'information nécessaire à
and the
notre
information
démocratie,
that they
mais aussi
need for
que
our
les géants du
democracy,
web
but
soient
also
là
that the
pour
web
payer leur
giants
juste part
do pay their
pour
fair
que
share
les journalistes puissent continuer de faire
so
leur
that
bon
journalists
travail.
can continue to do their good work.
It is extremely disappointing to see that Facebook continues to refuse to accept its responsibility towards our democracies by refusing to pay the fair share for Canadians to get local news and independent, rigorous journalistic content. Their decision to walk away rather than engage constructively is disappointing, but we are very much there to continue and to have conversations with them about how to make sure we're both supporting journalists and ensuring that Canadians can continue to function online in free and open ways. I will say that the conversations with Google are ongoing. It is important that we find a way to ensure that Canadians can continue to access content in all sorts of different ways, but that also we protect rigorous, independent journalism that has a foundational role in our democracies in holding authorities to account and keeping citizens informed about what's going on in their local communities and around the world. We know democracy only works with a strong, independent, diverse media, and we will continue standing up for that.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I wanted to ask about Olivia Chow's win in Toronto. We now have an NDP-linked mayor. We have a Liberal government, obviously, and a PC provincial government. How do all these levels of government with different visions on everything from climate change to bike lanes to the pace of housing, strong mayor powers, they all differ so much. How are these levels going to work together to actually achieve anything in Toronto?
I think over the years I demonstrated that on areas in which we agree, creating jobs, growing the economy for the future, I've been able to work very closely with Premier Ford, despite differences of political parties. In regards to Mayor Chow, I can say I'm really excited to have a strong progressive as Mayor of Toronto. And I know she'll be a real partner on a lot of things that we agree on, whether it's standing up for minorities and fundamental freedoms, whether it's women's rights or 2S LGBTQI+ rights, whether it's moving forward on investing massively in housing, in accelerating the processes so that we can solve the very real challenges so many people in the GTA and indeed around the country are facing on housing. The federal government has some tools that we're deploying, but it is best for us to work in partnership with municipalities and the provinces to deliver on housing. And I know that's an area that Premier Ford has talked about doing more in, and certainly in my congratulatory.
Okay, we've been listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau making a childcare announcement in Mississauga.